Development. My name is Caitlin Wentz. I'm the Planning Supervisor with the Land Use Review Division of the Planning Department. One of our employees, Logan Hubble, is the case manager for this application. He was unable to attend the meeting tonight, and so I will be filling in to answer questions about the project and the process related to how we review these applications. You have the applicant team here to give a presentation to you all tonight about some of the changes that have been made since the last neighborhood meeting that you all attended. I did want to talk briefly about one of the handouts that we had at the sign-in table. This is our development review process. This was created by the Planning Department, which talks a little bit about how we review applications in the city and what those processes are like and how you can get involved in that process. The back side of that page is related specifically to reviewing applications and what the Planning Department's role is in reviewing those applications, which is the application of the review criteria listed in our zoning code. And so you'll see some questions in this red box over on the right-hand side of that second page that are the review criteria that we are looking at when we evaluate applications that are submitted to our office for development plans, which is what this project is tonight. The developer is going to give a really quick overview of the changes that have been made, and then we're going to open it up to a Q&A. When we get to the Q&A, so one, I would ask that we hold any questions related to the presentation until we get to the Q&A portion of the meeting, so that we can move things along and make sure that we have an opportunity to hear all of your questions tonight. So, with that being said, we're not placing time limits on anybody who wishes to speak tonight or ask questions to the city staff or the developer team. There's a very large number of you here tonight, and I imagine that a lot of you would like to speak to one or several of us to ask questions about this application. So I do ask that you all respect the time of others and ask questions related to the process so that we can answer those to the best of our ability for the greater group. There's contact information on the bottom of this sheet for Logan Hubble, who's the case manager for this project. And if you had any of the business cards over on the side, that's my contact information. You all are more than welcome to reach out to me as well to discuss the project and the process that the city engages in. So with that, I'm going to pass it to the developer to start their presentation.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight. A lot of familiar faces. Want to lead off. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Is that better? Want to make sure we lead off with a quick presentation, but leave it mostly open for question and answer as we've done in the previous meetings. So here at the meeting tonight, you have myself, Eric Rodall with DVG Properties, and then we have our consulting team here. Tim and Hirsch represent our land use planner and our architect. And then we also have representatives from the city who are available, not on stage, but able to answer questions with both the planning department and community development. So for those who have not, I think most people are probably familiar with this project and who we are, but a quick overview on us, DVG Properties. We are an affordable and workforce housing developer. We're a Western region developer with a presence in 7 Western states. We are a long-term owner of every project that we do. We are a builder, developer, and manager of every project that we have. We have roughly 8,000 units between existing and currently under construction in our pipeline right now. Every one of those we built, every one of those we manage ourselves. We think that the long-term ownership model that we have does align us with our neighbors, and we take a lot of pride in being a good neighbor to folks. We are also a stakeholder in Colorado. We have 1,000 units in Colorado, and in Colorado Springs specifically, we have our Academy Heights project that's in lease up right now, so we feel that we're a stakeholder not only in the Front Range, but also this city specifically. The project location, as most of you know, 4150 Royal Pine Drive. It's at the intersection of Royal Pine and Union. This is the original development plan that we submitted, and we've made a few changes to this. And rather than focus on what this is, I want to focus on the team and saying some of the changes that we've taken as feedback through this process from your guys' comments, which I've done outreach through this. But at a high level, 232 units and 4-story buildings on just under 8 acres here. At the time that this went in, it was 309 parking spaces. That's something else that we'll talk about here. We can get back to this if we want to and revisit any of these slides. Who are the tenants for this? We've gone through this as well, but this is a mix of what we feel is really workforce housing, but there's 30% AMI, 60% AMI, and 70% AMI folks who would be qualified to live in this housing. 7% of those units would be at 30% AMI, for 17 units total. Those would be for families making $21,000 to $30,000 a year, 17 of those units. 164 at 60% AMI, that's 44,000 roughly to 60,000 depending on family and unit type, family size and unit type. And we have 51 70% units, which is just over $50,000 to $70,000 a year in annual income that you would qualify for this housing if you submitted an application. The rents on this blend to 60% exactly, which is roughly $1,100 for a one-bedroom, $1,300 for a two-bedroom, just over $1,500 for a three-bedroom. That would be the rent that we ask at this project. So we can get back to this again as well. I want to talk, obviously I've had extensive community outreach at this point. I've talked with a lot of you folks through this process. A lot of the feedback that we've gotten relates to these points, though there are more certainly, but we wanted to highlight these points as some of the changes, and I'm going to have our team walk through what we've done. So the first one that has gotten a lot of attention is traffic. And so I do think that we have traffic studies and some data to present. So Tim, can you walk through what that shows?
Good evening. Tim McConnell with Drexel Burrell. Traffic overall, let me start with one point that was brought up at the table at the prior meeting by many folks. We did look at ingress and egress from Union Boulevard. That was a request of many of you in the audience, of the folks that were here at the prior meeting. We are restricted by CDOT. I mentioned it at the meeting because we just got the answer, I think, the day before. But CDOT will not allow access to Union Boulevard from this site because it's within 550 feet. CDOT has a restriction coming off of Powers, the off-ramp there, 550 feet out, no ingress or egress points are allowed because that is it's a continuous off-ramp, continuous lane, comes right off of Powers, no stop condition, so it wouldn't be safe. So I want to put that out there. So that's a CDOT restriction. We aren't allowed to access Union Boulevard, which is why Lowe's and the other folks across the street don't have that access at this point either. So, as far as the traffic is concerned, we did an initial trip generation report submitted with the concept plan amendment. We did a follow-up traffic study that was submitted with the development plan. Actually, we just got comments back on the city on just a couple days ago here. And since the last neighborhood meeting that we had, you guys brought up a lot of good points. A lot of items that we have expanded the study, and we plan on submitting a more robust study to the city with the resubmittal of this development plan. It included getting additional traffic counts at the Pine Manor and Royal Pine intersection. We included a few of the city comments from the prior go-around, signal timing at Union and Royal Pine. We've done a full-blown roundabout capacity analysis, looked at some of the pedestrian bicycle safety issues, looked at Pine Manor. We received the city forwarded us the speed study that they had done previously for Pine Manor. So we looked at that. Maybe making a couple recommendations about mitigating some of the speed on Pine Manor and Royal Pine. We're looking at that. That study will be coming formally with the resubmittal in the coming weeks. Along with the city's comments that we received.
Do you have takeaways you can share?
Pardon?
Do you have takeaways on the data that you can share with the folks? Does it provide an acceptable level of service?
Currently all levels of service, if anybody knows what that is, it's kind of an A through F grade, basically, same as you have in school. Level of service A is fantastic level of service for traffic, keeps things moving in a timely manner. Level of service F, not very good. So, all of the traffic movements at the roundabout, Pine Manor, and then also at Royal Pine and Union, even in the 2045 condition, because we project out future traffic growth projections. Everything is level of service C or better. I think the roundabout is still A throughout the entire time frame. We can review that further when I make the formal we will be doing, the city requested, we've increased our traffic counts, I think, by 20% to account for school not being in session yet, but we do plan on doing new traffic counts and updating the study once school is in session and getting updated counts on that end.
Yes, I have this exhibit to show.
Parking was a big, major issue at the last meeting. I know a lot of folks were worried about over-parking in the apartment complex and people spilling over into the street, neighborhood streets, and the neighboring businesses. So we've updated the plan at this point in time. This hasn't been formally submitted. It will be formally submitted soon. We've added 30 more parking spaces to the project, with a 10% increase. So up to 339. So there are some trade-offs for that. Some open space, and if we look at adding more parking spaces, the open space amenities on the project would start shrinking at that point. Sorry, I'll try to hold it a lot closer. And that's kind of the short version on the parking.
I think the next items, Hirsch, if you want to weigh in here, line of sight, light pollution, trash collection.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. My name is Hirsch Parikh. I'm the president of South Lawn Architecture. I spoke with a lot of you folks at the last meeting, and I too heard about your concerns regarding parking. Interestingly, I also heard from some of you about not, also making sure, even as we study parking, that we're adequately parked, that we provide adequate outdoor amenities for our residents. That if you make a sea of asphalt and you don't have anywhere for kids to play, they will try to go elsewhere and therefore get into possibly, traffic situations and so on. So it was a hard kind of a trade-off. And we could get into the detail of it, but we have a very significant outdoor amenity area with, community gardens, play area, dog runs, all of that. We did not eliminate any of that. And in doing so, we were able to add 30 parking spaces, mostly removing what was around the detention area and made the detention area a little bit more aggressive. So just want to add a little bit more color. That's a fine line. We're trying to meet two competing objectives from you folks. Make sure there's enough outdoor amenities, make sure there's enough parking. Second thing we heard was concerns about light pollution. And I don't think we have a 100% solution yet, but we heard that and we're committed to making sure that we keep the number of light poles greater by lowering the height. So like you can cover the same area with like 2 light poles, very tall but 100 feet apart, or you can do the same job in terms of light levels by lowering the poles, but doing more of them. We're committed to doing the latter. And then when you lower them, you gotta mask them from surrounding neighbors by landscaping. We're committed to doing that landscaping buffers as well. Another great, interesting thing that I heard, that I'm from Denver, I'm not from Colorado Springs. So one thing I really appreciate is all you folks telling us about the nature preserve nearby and the animals and an incredible wildlife that you guys all see. And so as a result of that, we are committed to designing our trash pickup. Our trash collection is actually what we can do as a 4-story building, is do vertical trash chutes. So we have those. That means our trash is actually collected indoors in a collection room within the building. Then maintenance staff pulls it out, like twice a week, whatever. But we still have outdoor trash, we won't call them trash, let's say recycling and large item pickup areas. And for that we have built enclosures that normally look like trash enclosures. We're committed to designing those to prevent animal entry. And also for any small trash areas that we have receptacles, we're committed to making them animal proof as well. And I think, what was there, another item there, Eric? I think that's all the line of sight, yes, sorry. So there was some concern expressed by folks who live across Royal Pine Drive about, will folks be looking into our yards, right? I mean, will our privacy be impeded? And we drew the section, and this basically, you can kind of see on the top right corner, that's the site plan. You see that bold line. That's basically cutting a site section across the whole way and kind of reaches out across that one house. I think I actually spoke with a gentleman who owns that house, and to see the relationship. And you can see these dashed lines that show the relationship between this house here and the first residential dwelling unit or the highest one, right? The only folks who have a chance of looking into that yard are 412 feet away, and their line of sight into these yards is impeded by several things, not to mention the most primary one is this clubhouse, which is, as is shown right here, you can see it's a single-story clubhouse, and then a series of fences and landscaping. So I think, I'm pretty confident that I don't think those houses, privacy will be violated because of this line of sight concern.
So I think at this point we can open it up to question and answer. We wanted to reserve most of the time for you guys. So.
All right, thank you, everybody. I feel like an MC or something. So I wanted to start off with Steve. Okay, so like I said before, I just want to reiterate some of the rules of order for this meeting. So what's going to happen is we're going to have a staff person pass around this microphone. If you have any questions, I just ask that you raise your hand so we can identify you in the audience and bring the microphone to you. Again, this is intended to be questions about the project and questions about how the review process works with the City Planning Commission or City Planning. So I'm here to answer those questions if you have any. But I do ask that we be respectful throughout the course of this discussion. We would like for this to be a productive meeting where we can hear your concerns, and that is just my ask to all of you. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Steve, and he's going to start off with the Q&A.
Thank you, Kate. I just want to reiterate as well, try to remain professional. I know this is a very emotional topic. It is for me. When people get emotional, they get heated, and they sometimes will go after people unintentionally just because they're angry. And I would ask the city representatives and developer representatives that you please also show respect. Don't be condescending. Don't be patronizing. There's been several residents that have felt that way from some of the city officials. And I want to ask real quick, is this a city meeting or is this a developer meeting? So a developer meeting. So it's a developer meeting. Okay, so my question is not for you guys, it's for city officials. Private activity bonds. So several years, it's been an average of $12 to $14 million. However, this year, one developer from out of state is going to get all the dollars for 2023 and all the remaining dollars for 2022. One, how is that fair to other developers? Two, how is that spreading the wealth across the city? And three, those are federal taxpayer dollars. They don't grow on trees. They actually come from taxpayer dollars, so it's not free money. Why don't residents have a say on what happens with those private activity bonds? Thank you.
Thank you. So the Land Use Review Division does not oversee private activity bonds, but I do have Steve Posey here, Housing and Community Vitality Director.
Thank you, Caitlin, and I appreciate the question. Thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening. As Caitlin said, my name is Steve Posey. I am the city's Chief Housing Officer and the Director of the city's Department of Housing and Community Vitality. And my team does oversee the applications for private activity bonds and then shepherds those applications through a review process and then eventually takes them on to the city council when it's time to actually move forward with issuing those bonds. Those applications are accepted on a rolling basis and those bonds are made available essentially on a first come, first served basis to the developers as they come in with their projects. I'm sorry that I didn't bring a handout. I do have, we did put together an FAQ about these bonds, and that is available on our website. Please, I would encourage everybody to take a look at that. And I believe that that does a pretty good job of answering most of the questions about how we take those applications in, how we review them, and then what the process is for actually going from that application through to the issuance of the bonds.
Did you go over it?
I didn't answer the question.
last question I asked is how many taxpayers want to say and where those funds go?
So let's see, what's the best way to answer that? Taxpayers, this particular finance mechanism is authorized through the IRS. This is federal legislation that does enable cities to issue these types of bonds. So I guess my response to that is that the taxpayer does have input into that process, but it's at the federal level.
Microphone, please.
Yeah, use the microphone, please.
Can't hear.
The question was, is this the developer the only one who applied for these particular bonds? And as I said, these applications are accepted on a rolling basis. And when this developer came in and they asked for that amount of the bonding, that is the bonding that we had on hand in order to issue for this project.
Microphone, please.
Hang on a second. Hang on. Everyone who asks a question gets a microphone.
And everyone, again, I would like for this to remain respectful. And so if you have a question, please raise your hand and we can continue to have this dialogue.
So what you're saying is, this is the only developer that applied in 2022 for all of the budget for 2022, as that gentleman said, and for 2023. They ate up the entire budget. No other developer applied for anything else. They came first in line. And there's something, could you provide the proof of that? I would like to see the actually applications and who applied before and after that, in that order.
Yeah, we can absolutely get that for you. We do have a list of the applicants and the times and the dates that they applied for the financing. We can distribute it however you would like to have that distributed. We'll get it out to you.
Thank you. Jim, you had a few questions?
Jim Blair, you hear me okay? I worked with Steve, Natalie, and Susan Fortier. They're the ones that originally put together the volunteer team to look at this whole project. We have in Pine Creek a wealth of knowledge, professionals, experience in traffic, safety, environmental, and we're going to be providing the developer in the city with our rebuttal to everything that you guys are coming up with. My question is this. From day one, it's kind of a planning department, there seems to be a symbiotic relationship between developers and the planning department. I say that to show not being critical, because I know the kind of work you guys do, you have a lot to do. But I'd like to have someone address, how fair shake everything that we're doing on the volunteer side, or how fair shake we're going to get when you start reviewing the input we have to your particular staff.
Good evening. My name is Mike Tassi. I am the Assistant Planning Director for the Planning Department for the City of Colorado Springs. I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I think we've heard that in a number of different ways over all of that time. We do have a very specific process that's detailed in a code that we have to follow. That's why we put the handout together, so that you would be aware of what that process is. And so to answer the direct question, is there going to be a fair shake? Of course. That's the process that and I know I hear snickers out there, and I ask that you please not do that. I'm being honest here. This is, when we get an application in, we have to review the application against the standards and code. And every developer, every property owner, yourselves included, have the right to submit an application to us and process. And it is our job to process that application through whatever the code says. And so to answer the question, yes, we're going to give all of these comments the due deference. We're going to work with the developer as the go-between to ensure that some of these comments are addressed. I can't say, we're going to address every single one, because frankly, some of them may not be reasonable. So we have to evaluate that as well. But This application, and that we detail this in the handout, is an administrative approval, or not approval, it's an administrative process. So we evaluate it on it, we make a decision at the administrative level that can be appealed to planning commission and then appealed to city council. And in those, then you have opportunities to provide your comments not only to staff, but planning commission and council should you choose to. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. That process seems like it's the deep state at the local level. What it sounds like to me is it goes forward and our options are only on appeal. So a judgment is made and then we only get to appeal that decision that's done administratively, not by our public elected officials. The administrative.
So to be clear, the code that we have that has been adopted by City Council, it's a set of rules and guidelines for how we evaluate every application that gets submitted in the city. In this particular case, the residential that's being proposed is a permitted use in this zone district. And so that is an administrative decision. There are other applications that require a higher threshold review, whether that be planning commission or city council, but this is not one of those. So the answer is yes. This is an administrative decision, and whatever decision we make could be appealed by either the applicant or by the The question was, what is the threshold that would bump it above the administrative level? If they were asking for a zone change, that requires city council.
Excuse me, folks. Thank
Okay,
you. 1 second. We are trying our best to facilitate a discussion here. There is some back and forth. I would ask that if you have a question, you continue to keep your hand raised so that we can pass you the microphone so that everyone can hear what's happening. Thank you.
This gentleman in the green shirt has it.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a couple things I see here. First of all, there was a zone change that used to be a business development area. That's why you see the dental office, medical offices, vet. The second thing I'd like to comment on is when Academy Heights was built, that was a $22 million bond. That's a 203 apartment complex. The complex we're talking about here is 232, which is a 15% increase, which I would expect the bonds to be that differential. Instead, getting back to Steve's question, which is why are they getting $40 million for a project that should cost much less than that? So that's, I think, the question that was originally asked as well.
Apologize. I'll go to the podium next. A lot of that, there is 201 units at Academy Heights, so this would be 232 units, which is more expensive. And costs have gone up significantly as well. I would also note sorry. Yeah. It's in lease up, yeah. Yeah. But, well, costs have gone up significantly since we started that. I would also note, and Steve is better to speak to this, but it is an up to amount of $40 million that will be settled. And Steve, you should probably speak to this point more. And I'll use
Yeah, you know, in this early stage of the process, what we try to do is put a cap on the amount of the bonds that would be issued for the project. And in this case, the preliminary inducement resolution that was passed by City Council indicates that that bond amount would be up to $40 million. It may be less than that, but it would not exceed $40 million for this particular project.
Hi, I'm Dan. Can you hear me? What I'm talking about, it's more like when the developer applied to develop Pine Creek, it was guaranteed to the city that we would maintain all the perimeter around Pine Creek, which includes Union Boulevard, Royal Pine, Pine Manor, and Chapel Hills, as well as Broadmoor. We spent about $1.2 million in maintenance of those areas, the common areas owned by the city. What's going to happen if you allow this through? Because they are within Pine Creek, right off of Pine Manor. Are they going to take over all the property that we've been maintaining now? Are you aware that La Plata actually, that was the guarantee with the city that we would maintain all that property?
Who is we? Can you just add?
La Plata, originally when they were developed in the 90s, they told the city we would maintain the perimeter all the way around Pine Creek. And if you look at the map, that's Briargate Parkway, Union Boulevard, Royal Pine, the HOA was maintained. You know, it costs us approximately right now, if you look at our budget, about $1.23 million to maintain the sidewalks, the irrigation, insurance that we're going to require. You know, people slip on the city streets there from these neighborhoods. We're going to be responsible. Is the city going to go ahead and take over all that property and maintain it? If you're going to develop this, I think that would make sense. Why should we continue to pay for it? We're going to have an additional 600 people using our private park, driving through all the main thoroughfares through Pine Creek, and it just, we're going to get screwed, the homeowners. Our dues will continue to go up further, and yet you guys will be happy having this apartment complex there. And I could talk about the traffic, and that's already been talked about. There's so much of that. But are they going to guarantee that they will maybe reimburse us 20% of our maintenance costs for the perimeter of Pine Creek? Or are they just going to say, well, we'll just take over?
So I'm not sure what agreements you're referring to. That's a question that we're going to have to look into. So I don't know if you're part of the Briargate GID or if you have your own metropolitan district that funds the maintenance and improvements. So that's something that we'll have to look into because I frankly just don't know. So that's a question we could follow up on.
Thank you for the question. I'm not aware of anything else with La Plata, but I can certainly follow up on that. I can say if we do purchase the land, the market at Pine Creek, I believe that we would step in as the common area manager of that and be responsible for the upkeep of the master plan there.
As far as Pine Creek, what are you talking about? What are you going to maintain? You're going to maintain Union Boulevard all the way up to Briargate Parkway? You're going to maintain Royal Pine all the way up to Chapel Hills?
What's included in the master plan?
What is it?
The 8 lots in the master plan.
That's it. So you're talking about your property there, not Royal Pine.
As well as the public space in there. That's the agreement.
You're not talking about the main city street, which we maintain all the sidewalks, all the common areas, landscaping. You make Pine Creek look good.
To my knowledge, we're not part of that.
So how are we going to get reimbursed from the city to maintain all that?
Sir, I'll have to look into that because I'm not familiar with what you're referring to, but that's a question we could follow up on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to announce, fortunate to announce that 7 years ago to this week, we moved into this area from Kissing Cows. It's a much nicer neighborhood here than Kissing Cows. I'll address this to Caitlin to a degree. I recognize that the 2424 old MCI building, which is at the intersection of Garden of the Gods and 30th Street, was flatly rejected because of one criteria primarily, the traffic and mobility problems. With Garden of the Gods at 30th Street, they rejected a similar proposal there. That's one criteria. If you look at the development plan review criteria, there are at least 7 here that are impacted to a much greater degree than the one the city just rejected. I'd like to run through a bunch of them. Off-site impacts. Well, there's virtually no employment opportunities in that site in the immediate area for people that will be residents of this apartment complex. There are a lot of other areas, North and South Nevada redevelopment programs, where you have immense employment opportunities for people who might fit into the same criteria economically. Let's talk about the school district, District 20. It's one of the best school districts in the state. We all benefit from that. With the number of 2 and 3 bedroom units being proposed, I assume that there will be a lot of younger children in those second and third bedrooms. Has any provision been made for the impact on School District 20 for an influx of 300 to 400 new students in this age bracket? I would propose that the DBG has to provide at least $1 million a year for the next 10 years to District 20 to provide for staffing, school buses, and additional classrooms that will be required for this influx of students. Same provision might apply to the police and the hospitals. Certainly in this demographic, a lot of these people will be on Medicaid. That's going to have a great impact on our hospitals, which right now today are superb. I don't think there's been any provision for that impact on both the police and the hospitals. Let's look at open spaces. You talked a little bit about parking. I don't know that additional 30 parking spots are going to affect in a positive way the balance of cars that are going to be introduced to the neighborhood and that will be impacting those 3 small businesses. Also, I don't know that people in this demographic can afford EVs, but the mandate is that 67% of the EVs in this country in the next 10 years will be mandated. And have you provided charging stations for these 330-some units? Or will people run extension cords out the windows to the cars? Environmental protection. We all know we have a wildlife preserve there. I don't know what the runoff problems will be. Certainly pets in that area are going to be a problem to wildlife. The rabbits, the bunnies, the deers, the bear, everything else that lives there. The one on 2420 on Garden of the Gods was rejected because of traffic and mobility. Certainly, the traffic and mobility issues in this site are 100 times worse than they were on Garden of the Gods. You have an inlet there from a roundabout, which today, fortunately, got repaired today, finally, but it's not adequate for an additional 400 or 500 cars at peak times. Today we have, I'm going to estimate 1,000 homes that have access to the city from this location, primarily on Chapel Hills Drive or Royal Pines Drive. At peak business times, mornings and evenings, they are congested. You rejected 2424 because of traffic congestion, and yet this site is 1,000 times worse. I appreciate your time.
Sir, I didn't catch your name, but was there a question that you wanted me to answer? Through that, I want to make sure that I'm respecting your question.
No question. I followed the pattern of DBG and put everything on hold for the future.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Natalie Ingram, and to those of you who are working diligently on what you think is important for the city, you notice that it's quite contentious. And here's the backstory to it, and then I will ask a question. When many of us moved into this neighborhood, we believed that there would be medical offices, and there's still a huge billboard there saying, medical offices coming. I think many of the residents feel like there's a bait and switch. Namely, back in July of 2021, the initiatives of Retool COS and Home COS, Plans US, right? I've done my reading. There was a public review, public draft review, a few reviews throughout the fall. None of our representatives came up to any of our community meetings or in any way painted the picture of what that meant. That this was a multi-use, that it could have multifamily, namely apartments, going into that plot. So there was a misstep there. This is why you have this hostility towards you. I have nothing against a business that wants to do business, but I think that your process has missed. Otherwise, you wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have the upset. You wouldn't have the crosstalk. You wouldn't have the anger. Thank you. People feel like they've just been duped. And we live there. You can say that you've driven through there. But when you see through the height of school and whatever else going on, that it seems impossible to accommodate the many, many people that will be going into these apartments. And we all think, well, most of the people I've spoken to think that it doesn't matter if we have these meetings because you're listening but you're not hearing. We feel like we have no say in, we know we don't own that plot of land, but we feel like we have no say in our backyard. So that's where the hostility is coming from. And if you can take a moment and understand that, yes, we need to be respectful. But now we know that the apartments will probably go up, and we had no say in the initiative to start with. And now we are asking for some mitigations. So there's still some that are real safety issues, not just inconvenience issues. And I don't see that there's any mitigation for that. So my question is, are you going to have more of these meetings, and will you truly listen and make adjustments based on what we know to be fundamentally needed to be able to live in harmony in that neighborhood?
Thank you. So you talked a little bit about retool and that, and I just wanted to go over a few points there. So the Retool COS program was an effort to update our zoning code, which had not been updated in a period of about 30 years. This property in particular does have a concept plan as part of it, which outlined a number of uses, not just medical offices, that could be built there. Under the PBC zoning, which was the zoning that was in place prior to the effectiveness of the UDC, the PBC, Planned Business Center, allowed for a mix of uses which included multifamily as a conditionally permitted use in the zone district. With the change to the UDC and the adoption of that, the PBC zone district was voted to be moved to a new name called MXM. The difference between the MXM zoning and the PBC is the change that multifamily uses are now permitted by right as opposed to conditionally permitted in the zone. So the difference there is simply a step to go to Planning Commission if it were a conditionally permitted use. So that use, while it may not have been advertised by the landowner at the time, was a possibility for the vacant land. And we, as the city planning office, we do not direct development or tell developers where they can build and not build, right? This is a private property owner coming to the city asking to build something on their land. And our purview for evaluating that is evaluating it based on the review criteria, what we have today. What we have today indicates that the use is permitted by right in the zone district should it comply with the review criteria in the city zoning code. And I know that it may seem as though we are not listening to you, but we're at this meeting, facilitating this meeting to hear from each of you tonight and understand what your concerns are. We've read the emails. We have cataloged them and provided them to the developer and other individuals in an effort to address the questions and concerns that you have. And as the plan reviewers, our purview doesn't extend beyond what the review criteria allows us to do. There were questions about the school and traffic and a few other key items of concern. We do have our traffic engineer review the traffic impact analysis that was provided by the developer. There still are questions related to that report, and our traffic engineers haven't accepted that yet because we feel that we need more information to make an informed decision. With the school district, they have a census officer who essentially evaluates applications as they come into our office, and they review their capacity at the local schools and the district as a whole in order to make a determination of if a particular development would not only generate new students, but if their schools have the capacity to manage the new students that would live in that residential community. What the school district has told us is that they have capacity. So they're the experts in what they can offer the community, and what they have decided and told our office is that they do have the capacity to support that, and the developer will be required to pay fees to the school district if this project is approved when they pull building permits. They're required to pay a fee per unit to the district. In this year, January of 2023, the city adopted what are called community development impact fees, which are fees that are paid to the police and fire department, again, to offset and help address the lack of infrastructure we have in some places to support those emergency services in our community. So again, this project, they are required to pay community development impact fees should this property or should this project, move to be developed. So those are some of the ways in which our office looks at these elements, and we really rely on our subject matter experts in order to make informed decisions about how we view these applications, and your involvement is part of that.
Kate, hold on one second. This gentleman had his hand up for a while, and then there's an idea about having folks who have a question stand in line.
If that's,
That way not hold your hand up for now.
sure, if that's what everyone would like to do.
Hi, my name is Jack Kraniak. One thing I have to say is, if CDOT said that they do not want you dumping your traffic out onto Union, then why would we want you guys dumping it into our neighborhood? That just does not make sense. My next part, and this is going to be part of a three thing here. I've looked at the plan for the development. During the summertime when the kids are out of school, they need stuff to do. I don't see a pool, I don't see anything except for maybe a playground for them to do. So they're going to wander outside the gate. When they wander outside your fences that you build around your project, then where are they going to go? First place they're going to go is right where all of our endangered species are and play down in those areas. That's not right. And then third off, I'm going to ask the city something. Let me get my numbers right here. So far for 2023, there are 4,758 multifamily units coming out of the ground. For 2024 through 2025, we have an additional 7,517 units coming out of the ground right now. Our infrastructure cannot handle this. And I'm asking you guys, when are you going to start protecting your residents? And what
Sorry, Tim McConnell again. I'll try to answer the CDOT question to start with. That is a more of a speed and safety issue. It's not a traffic volume or trip generation question. Because of the continuous lane that comes off of Powers, the vehicles are not stopping. It's a continuous movement. And they restrict that within 550 feet of those off-ramps for that safety issue for traffic weaving and speed issues at that point in time. So it's not.
Issues on our streets.
Those are controlled intersections at
No.
the development. It's not the same as an off-ramp where you could have traffic speeding off of Powers, and we're coming directly onto Union in its own lane.
Let's stop the crosstalk, please. We can try to answer.
Understood. Now, that's what the traffic study.
I'm sorry, I'll try to answer one of the questions there, which is about whether there's adequate open space. I'd like to just point out some of the planning regarding the open space. So as architects of multifamily housing, one configuration we absolutely love is a U-shaped building. What a U-shaped building does, it creates a courtyard with a bunch of eyes on that courtyard, and it also allows a play area that's secure from traffic. And you can see that we have 3 buildings here. One is that bar-shaped building, but the other 2 are U-shaped buildings. And those courtyards will be amenitized, they'll be fenced, they'll be a great, safe place for kids to play, and offer also great variety between shade and sunny exposure, depending on the weather. And then just around here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, right over here is a common amenity area. Yep, right there. That's the one that I mentioned earlier about vegetable garden plots, play area, dog run, etc. And then also the clubhouse is a great amenity space that it's not outdoors, but it has a gym, it has a co-working space, it has a community room with TV, sports lounge, that kind of thing. And all of that opens into a secure, fenced area that can be like rented by the residents for parties, etc. So just want to give you that information.
So, excuse me, and you've got a very nice plan, but at the end of the day, how many 9-year-olds do you see going to the gym to work out? I mean, I'm serious. The kids are going to run around the neighborhood and they're going to get into endangered species areas. And you don't have an answer for that. You haven't given an answer for that. So I don't know how that's going to be controlled. And the city needs to listen to this too and understand the concerns we have.
Some of you may know me. I'm a veterinarian. I represent some of the businesses, the 3 businesses in the area. Twofold question, not for the developers, but I do appreciate you guys being here again. One of our biggest concerns is the density and the number of kids that might be there. I love kids, they're great. They get into trouble when there's herd health mentality. I have enough fentanyl in my hospital to kill all of Colorado Springs. Don't get any ideas stealing. I need to know, from a safety perspective, what is Colorado Springs going to do every time I get broken into? Because I know I've already been broken into twice. They have not found my drugs, thank heavens. The drugs are locked up in 3 different safes, but that will not stop a couple of teenagers or a couple of gangs from getting into my hospital and stealing that fentanyl that has a huge street value. How are we going to protect the citizens of Colorado Springs just because of my fentanyl alone that's in that area, not to mention the other 2 businesses, the other 2 hospitals? What plans have you guys for that? And I do have a second question after that. I don't know who's going to answer those.
I think that's, and I don't want to sound like I'm punting a question, that is a question more for the police department when you're talking about what sort of plans they have for response times and whatnot.
But has the city taken into consideration the density, the pure density of what's going in this very small location? That's a lot of people and a lot of potential kids. And they get bored during the summer, they get bored at nighttime. And there's no traffic there during nighttime.
I actually can add a suggestion to that. The police department does have something called crime prevention through environmental design. And I know that one of their officers would be happy to come out and meet with you and take a look at the property and see if there are suggestions or ways that you could take measures that would help prevent some of that possibility of death.
They did. After the second break-in, they came and they said everything that we're doing, they wouldn't suggest anything different.
Christy, but I know you answered or asked the city. I think those are very good concerns. I'd love to coordinate with you if we go forward to come up with strategies, by the way, on that. So just so you know. Yeah.
My second question is mostly for the city. Are you aware that there are covenants, joint covenants in place for this immediate spot, not for the entire Pine Creek area or Briargate, but we have joint covenants specifically for this small area that said it is strictly for commercial use only, and the 3 businesses signed that, and we purchased land because it was going to be for commercial use. Now, I know the zoning might have changed, but we still have covenants in place. The amendments that the but the agent wants us to sign, we are not signing. So is the city aware of those covenants? And what are they going to do to help protect our rights as citizens in those covenants?
Yes, the city is aware that the city is aware of those covenants. However, the city planning office does not enforce covenants through our zoning. That is those are matters between private property owners and the entities that hold the condition, the covenants. La Plata is aware of this request. They're the overseer of the covenants in this area, and I believe that they are working with both the developer and the rest of the community to work through those issues, but that is not one of the considerations that we have in planning as a mechanism to review against any proposed applications.
Why is that not something that you take into consideration? Because we are your citizens. We're part of this community. I don't understand why that's not part of the review process.
It's a legal issue, as Caitlin had mentioned. Covenants it's like a contract between private properties, and the city's not involved. So we can't enforce any of the covenants that you have with the property owners. That's not something the city can get.
And you don't take into consideration at all?
We cannot.
So my question is around someone brought up child care. And I investigated this a little bit myself, and at least within a 5-mile radius, all of the child care that is out there has about a 9-month wait list, and that doesn't seem to be changing at all. Second, I would say that of those daycare centers, they are not state certified for safety and health. They are below the median that's required by the state. Thirdly, there's the Colorado Care Affordable Assistance, thank you, which will cover low-income people, families, and there is only one center that actually covers that. So all those kids that would be moving into these apartments have no place to go, and it runs about between $11,500 and $12,000 per year to just have a kid in child care. So where are these kids going to go? The other thing, just real quick here, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing. I appreciate your comments. I think the reason there's a little bit of hostility is there hasn't been enough transparency, and we're all talking here, and we feel like we're talking blue in the face because we don't see anything that is really changing the progress of this and listening to our genuine concerns. Really, I just see this as we're going to push through this, we're going to listen to you, and then we're going to do what we're going to do anyway.
I'll have the developer answer the daycare question, and then I'll comment on the last one.
Yeah, on child care, we have a lot of units, at least to my knowledge, that has never come up. For us, if it doesn't improve the quality of our tenants' life, then they don't need to move there. But a lot of what the families that we would house go through is stability in the housing market. They're priced out of houses in this area, or will be. This will provide a place that's close to work for them. It's also restricted,
That's a joke.
Restricted housing in terms of the rents. And so a lot of the residents now, without this type of housing, oftentimes live in older apartment buildings, and a lot of those have been renovated and their rents have been lifted quickly. So we have very sticky tenant base typically, particularly with families, and I think it's that stability that they're seeking.
So no kids?
I'm sure there will be kids, yeah.
But no daycare?
We don't provide daycare, no. well, they can make that decision for themselves.
So let me respond to the last comment. I feel like I've talked about this a couple of times already. I mean, I don't know how else to convince this neighborhood, or any neighborhood really, that we're here to listen. I don't know what you mean by transparency. I mean, we're having a neighborhood meeting, we're here. The city is listening, we've convened this with the developer. So I know you're not hearing us say, well, absolutely no, we're not gonna do that. But we're here to hear your comments so that we can pass those along to the developer, we can pass it along to other decision makers. So I'm not sure how else to convince you in particular, sir, or others who have answered that question, that we're listening. So I mean, that's all I can say is what we're doing.
Thank you. I'll use the podium because. Good evening. My name is Tim Lewin, and I live in the Blossom Hill neighborhood of Pine Creek. Unless there's any objection, I'll take a few minutes to talk about traffic safety specifically. I've lived here for 3 years with my wife and 4 kids, aging 8 all the way down to 1. They attend Mountain View Elementary School, and we very much enjoy walking them to school. I love our community, and I love our home. In the last 3 years, while I've been in active duty military, we've been blessed and happy with this beautiful, wonderful community. However, last November, we were all driving home after attending a family basketball game at Timberview Middle School. At the intersection of Royal Pine and Briargate, another vehicle failed to yield on a green light and hit us head on, causing all airbags to deploy. Both vehicles were totaled, but luckily only minor injury to our family and the other party. This experience made me realize that even while they were only 3 minutes away from our house, horrific traffic accidents can occur. And I will always take serious the notion of community safety and safeguarding my family and neighborhoods because of this event. Tonight we've heard about assurances, processes, procedures, bureaucracies, all that stuff. But I want to talk tonight about common sense community safety for everyone. Specifically, I'd like to address my concerns with the traffic study presented to the community on behalf of the developer and the many issues I see with it. I understand the traffic study finds an acceptable conclusion within the city guidelines because it finds the development will generate 2,257 weekday trips of traffic. This figure falls much shorter than the city's requirement of 8,441. I also acknowledge they're redoing the study. However, there are many flaws I see with this assessment. And all of these flaws are against a common sense, safe approach. These flaws, in my view, will continue despite their assurances to redo the study and relook at the data. Is 20% really enough for the school transportation? Is that a good assessment? Of course not. The report makes the conclusion based upon 2 factors, real and projected traffic data. The real traffic data was gathered from only one non-school day, June 20th, and estimated traffic data based upon square footage of the apartment complex and the surrounding businesses, not the amount of parking spaces. It finds 92.5% of the traffic will either exfil or infill from the Union Boulevard and not turn northwest towards Pine Creek neighborhood along Royal Pine. Again, this large percentage, 92.5%, is based upon the previous rate of flow from the June 20th study. But common sense says otherwise, and we know that. For example, to get to Shields or anywhere on Voyager from this development, a quick study of the route from Google shows that it is shorter to cut through Pine Creek neighborhood over to rather than Powers, at 4.6 miles compared to 4.8 miles. And you also get 3 fewer traffic lights. We know that they're going to cut through the neighborhood. Common sense tells us that they will. The square footage figure from Table 1 on page 7 of their traffic impact study estimates 2.7 residences per dwelling. It does not take into account the developer's plan to add more parking spaces and therefore more vehicles. It's also not a correct estimate with the increased vehicles because of no viable public transportation. Again, not based in common sense. It does not consider increased pedestrian traffic, which the need for school transportation and recreation will invariably create. On June 20th, during the peak times measured, the temperature was 89 degrees. Reading the charts, the study counted only 24 pedestrians either crossing west or east, some of which could have been the same walkers walking back to their own homes. Of course, pedestrian traffic will increase at a much higher rate than the developers are reporting. Now, I'm not saying the traffic study was done with ill intent, or that the firm they outsourced it to did not write the report according to the standards of the Institute of Transportation Engineers or city regulations. What I am saying is that the underlying assumptions, the methods, and therefore their conclusions are not rooted in common sense. Many flaws exist that should affect the city's consideration of the risks associated with this project. This calendar year, according to the city's accident database, there have been 531 accidents in the Pine Creek area, 73 of those involving injury. And that's our neighborhood, Pine Creek, 531. Traffic safety, along with all other forms of safety, are paramount to safeguard everyone in the community, including the people who this development will help. The results of this traffic study are insufficient. The developer has, of course, promised to complete another traffic study during the school year with enhanced data, but that will be after the administrative review and after further consideration. My question is if the traffic study is flawed according to the principles of common sense, what else is flawed according to the same principle? The developer stated that the purpose of this project is to provide affordable housing to the people who need it, but at what cost? If this development is about people rather than profits, then the city ought to consider the risks associated with the increased traffic flow that will undoubtedly lead to more traffic congestion, accidents, and ultimately injury. There are other solutions to consider, and therefore I humbly and respectfully ask the city, not based upon procedure, bureaucracy, or anything like that, but based upon the principle of common sense, to cease action on this development and seek another solution. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rick Lancaster, and I know some of you have probably cussed my name a few times when I was on the board, but one of the things that I learned is the history of this community. And it's important to know, and it's important for our city to understand, and it's important for the developers to understand that we are not a metro district, okay? When you look at your taxes, you won't see anything specific to Pine Creek. If you go across Powers to Cordera, Wolf Ranch, they are all metro districts. They're all taxed for the development. This is important for us because everything that's maintained and every amenity in our community is paid for through our HOA dues, okay? There are also some businesses on the corner of Union, I'm sorry, not Union, but Briargate and Chapel Hills. The restaurants, those apartment buildings, they pay to the association to be a part of our community. Those residential apartments pay to the association. So if you look at the budget, you will see that there is, by being a part of our community, and you draw a line around from Chapel Hills and Briargate and then up Union and then Royal Pine, when you look at that circumference, nearly everything that you see is owned and maintained by the people in the homes in Pine Creek. The 1,424 lots, one still empty, okay? That almost $100 per month pays for every sidewalk, every fence, every wall, all the lawn mowing, all the snow removal. Dan brought it up. And it also includes down Briargate, the center, the median between the lanes is maintained by the homeowners in our community. Down Chapel Hills is maintained by homeowners in our community. We water it, we mow it, we shovel the sidewalks, and we have a 3.5-acre park that the homeowners elected to not turn into homes and take advantage of the sale of that, several $1 million worth. We put playground equipment on there. We maintain the playground equipment. We pay the insurance. All of these things, these are not city provided, and these are not taxed. These are our monthly association fees. The apartment complex is going to take advantage of being part of our community. Let's say that it goes through. They're going to join our community in terms of using our amenities, the park. We're not going to put a fence around it. We're not going to put a magnetic lock on it and an access card. It's impractical. But at the same time, we're paying for it. And so when I look at this, and I look at when La Plata designed this, they didn't tax us. They designed it to be in total community, a residential community, and at Royal Pine, that corner was to have been commercial space. There was no expectation that several hundred new residents would be joining us and taking advantage of what we pay for. Even Royal Pine, on both sides of that street, Royal Pine is maintained by the association with the exception of that wildlife space, which isn't maintained at all. And the only access we have to the wildlife space is to mow a strip down to maintain the fences that are adjacent to it. What I'm saying is that, you know, you come in and you bring new residences that weren't planned by the developer. We have no way to exclude them, but we also have no way to, to get compensated for the impact to our community. So if I go under the assumption that the city approves this and it goes through, they're not going to be taxed to our advantage. They're not going to be paying for the amenities that we pay for. And you could say, well, it's kind of a not in my backyard thing. Well, this is literally our backyard. Okay? It's not just, I guess that, several hundred new residents are going to come in and say, wow, this is a great place. Yes, it is. It's a great place. And all the homeowners in this pay to keep it a great place. The city has no responsibility. They maintain the streets, the public streets, but everything else you see that's green or standing, the trees, all of the rest of that are paid for by the people here. And so, selfishly, what's in it for us? Okay? Because this is an impact to us as the residents of this association. The city doesn't look at this because it's not a metro district. They don't get taxed. They weren't added to Pine Creek Metro District because it doesn't exist. And we have no way under law to ask them, as La Plata planned for the apartments at the other end of our community, where? Over there, okay? So La Plata planned all that. La Plata planned for this to be commercial space. So there was no inclusion of that, that said those residences would pay in order to take advantage of the amenities in our community. I think that's wrong. And I don't know how to ask for it because we're not a metro district. So you can't just simply tax them and say, well, we did it. We are a homeowners association that was created in the early 90s and designed as you see it now. It's complete. It's great. We do a good job of maintaining it. Sorry that it's $100 a month. That's what it costs. But the reality is that it'll be $100 a month and other people are going to use it without paying for it. And so, yes, I sound selfish, okay? But it's a real impact. In that park that we maintain, it's very attractive, and it's a lot closer than Venezia and a lot safer to walk down Pine Manor than it is to walk down Union and cross over to get to Venezia Park if you've got children. So you can send them a few blocks down and say, go play. I get it. I would too. But It's not a city park, it's our park. People here paid for it, and we continue to pay for it. So how do we get, let's say this goes through. I don't want it to go through. Let's say it goes through. How do you share the impact cost to the 1,424 homeowners in our community that you're doing?
I can't speak to what the negotiations were prior to us coming in. We're not part of that HOA as far as I'm concerned, and we're building in conformance with the zoning. One of the things that we've gone through, and I continue to say, is that we're a long-term owner, and I'm happy to provide my contact, stay in front of you. I can be the point of contact during the pre-development, during construction, during lease-up, and through the operations. We don't want to be a nuisance in that sense. And so I'm happy to keep the dialogue open with you. I'm happy to provide the email and stay in touch with you through this whole process.
I do want to say we've got about half an hour left in the meeting, and we do have a line of about 9 people, so I want to make sure we keep this moving so everybody has an opportunity to speak. That is something that we're taking notes on all these comments, so we'll look at.
Hello, my name is Eddie Lawrence. I live about a half mile from the proposed development, and I have serious issues with the criteria of compatibility to this development. Serious issues. And I'm just going to make bullet points so we can get through this real quick, okay? Our evacuation route at a single lane roundabout on Royal Pine Drive for an additional 1,000+ people. In our current state, not what you plan to do, but it's a 1-lane roundabout going out on Royal Pine. Is that compatible? Does that meet the criteria of compatibility? Okay, should I move on? I am.
There are going to be some questions we're going to have to look into, so just keep.
Finally.
Okay. So non-compatible. Next. Our roads being able to accommodate the traffic of an additional 1,000+ people, all driving from a space of 8 acres. Is that compatible?
No.
Non-compatible. 3. Our strained police and fire departments with an average response times right now are currently strained. Too long to get to where we need them to do. My neighbors directly right across from me had their door kicked in a few months ago. 7 o'clock at night, we walk every night, and we were just talking about how quiet and peaceful it was. And they got their back door kicked in and robbed. Their daughter just left the house. And that's in its current state, not what you plan to do. Is that compatible? No. Already crowded schools, teacher shortages, and strained district budgets. I know, Caitlin, you talked to District 20, but my kids have been in this district since kindergarten. I have one in high school and one in middle school. And those classes are 25+ students. I volunteer every year. And I know what they told you, but judging from there, 25+ kids in a classroom, there's no room. Okay? Is that compatible? No. Our current infrastructure, septic, sewer, drainage, and the watershed for 1,000+ more people. Compatible in its current state? No. Was this property designed, this property located for that? No, it was designed for a few businesses in that area. Our displaced animals from the animal reserve, including 2 endangered species, protected for 25 years in this reserve, being overrun and overdeveloped and displaced into our neighborhoods. The other, doing our research, because we're part of the environmental internal study, we discovered that the Canadian lynx is also on the endangered list. We reported last March a Canadian lynx on our patio. My whole family saw it. Clearly a lynx. I grew up here. I know the difference between a lynx and a bobcat. And this was a juvenile lynx in our neighborhood. That's 2 endangered species in that area. And Pine Creek is right in the middle of the Air Force Academy's overlay zone, right in the middle of that. Have you guys got approval from the Air Force Academy on this?
Air Force Academy has reviewed this application, yes.
They reviewed it, have you got approval for it?
They have requested that 2 notes be placed on the plan in the final plat related to being under their abrogation area, but they have not cited any concerns with the proposal for residential development on this parcel.
Okay, thank you. So, in its current state where we are at, where our property is at, that's a lot of criteria for non-compatibility to our neighborhood. That is my, I had to narrow it down to 7. So I'm going to leave it at that, thank you.
Good evening, neighbors. My name is David Dorland. I'm a part of the Cherry Plum contingent here tonight. I've got 2 quick anecdotal comments and then a specific question for the developer here. I get my exercise by riding my bike. Okay. In fact, before I came to this meeting this evening, okay, I rode down Royal Pine. I rode down Pine Manor. I went through that roundabout. Okay. I ride on that bike lane all the time, and my head is still spinning, okay, every single time I do it because of the number of cars and the speed of the cars going through there, okay? I can tell you that by adding 232 units, if I got that number correct, and all those additional cars going through that roundabout and shooting down Royal Pine, which I ride on almost every single day, okay? Is an issue for me. And I'm a 62-year-old, well, I've got to be 62 tomorrow, 62-year-old man, okay? What about all the kids, okay, that are going to have bikes in those apartments, okay, trying to ride on those same streets, okay, let alone all the other kids that are currently walking in or riding their bikes on the streets as they exist currently today, okay? The second anecdotal comment is, when my wife and I got married 40 years ago, we had 2 cars. Okay? We lived in an apartment for the first year. Starting off, we had 2 cars. Okay? We're talking 232 units. Okay? I would suspect most of those have 2 cars. Okay? So, do the quick math, that's 464 cars. Okay? Even with the additional car spaces that you're talking about, okay, that is not enough. Okay? And so my question to you, the developer, is this. You have 232 units. What is your break-even point? Okay? How many units do you have to break even before you get into a profit? And are you willing, potentially, to reduce the number of units down to or close to that break-even point so that we can reduce the number of vehicles in that area to make it more safe for us? Thank you.
Well, in terms of the break-even point, the underwriting is extremely tight as it is. We have a lot of risk into this deal, and we actually don't make, yep. The way that we make money through this process is through operations that's collected over a long period of time, and we take a lot of risk to get to that point. So 232 units is the break-even point, and I think we're going out on a limb of what most developers would do on this.
Hello, my name is Lexi Borg. I'm a parent of 5 children that go to D20 schools. I have a bunch of questions, and it seems like when multiple get asked, they don't get followed up on. So I'm just going to ask one at a time. You said you're a long-term developer. Yeah. When I looked at your website, it looked like almost all of your projects were still in process. What is the longest term of your projects, and how long have you stood with them?
1997, I believe.
And which one was that? Is it on your website?
It is, and I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get that information for you.
Okay, so you're a long-term developer that stays with it, but you don't know the name of it?
It was before my time that it was developed.
I'm just trying to clarify. I would also love the name of your D20 contact. When I spoke with the registrar, they informed me that middle schools and high schools do not have max capacity limits for classes or for schools. Pine Creek is already adding 7 portables. They're trying to find enough teachers. My kids go there. It's bursting at the seams. You can hardly park. Who is your contact that told you there was space at our school? I mean, in our district, I agree.
School District 20's contact, his name is Mr. Smith.
I would like to because I looked for him in their directory and I couldn't find him yesterday. Because someone said Don Smith.
Don
And I
Smith
couldn't
is the
find
contact. That is who I coordinate with, and he has a District 20.
So if you could forward that contact information to us, I think a lot of us as parents would be really interested.
Sure.
I also spoke with the PTA president at Mountain View. They're no longer, our school is bursting at the seams as well. They are no longer able to hold evening events in the wintertime because they cannot fit everyone within the building. We have grown too large. So I just want to point that out when we hear things like, there's plenty of space. For what? My kids are in classes of 30 plus. They're losing out on community events already because we are too overgrown. And then we're going to add hundreds of families that need good schooling and they need good opportunities. But I wish that we would put it in a place where the schools need. Prairie Hills is under enrollment. There are a lot of areas in our city that have awesome opportunities. But our schools are overfilled right now. My other question, I have children that walk to the bus stop on Pine Manor. I'm terrified about cars parking down that street and the traffic that is going to come. We bike there, we rollerblade there, we walk there. You mentioned that you are going to try to have some things that mitigate traffic. Is that just more speed bumps, or what are the things that you're looking into to mitigate traffic along there?
Bethany Meadows, 1997.
A couple of the items that we're looking at for potential traffic calming, but obviously all of this would have to go through city review, city traffic department, because it's their roadways, but you know, potentially more speed bumps. There are the digital signs that are relatively effective in a lot of neighborhoods. Say city traffic can talk about that further, and there are other alternatives we can look at, necking down roadways in certain areas to make it narrower as a traffic calming device. I'm just answering your question. There are multiple alternatives to look at pending city review and their comments, because all of these are public roadways owned and maintained by the city, so ultimately it will be their decision.
Okay, so to clarify, the options you're looking at right now are more speed bumps, possibly electronic signs, or narrowing a two-lane road?
Those are some potential options.
Okay. So I would just share, it's a little frustrating as citizens when we come and we're told things like, we've sent our emails and we're told that they've been read, but then when questions are asked, we're told that we don't have the answers to those things. So to help us feel heard, having answers to things we've already emailed in would be very helpful. And then once again, going back, I mean, this sounds like this project is almost twice the budget of about 15% more, and yet you're saying that the margin's very slim. Some numbers like that are really hard to hear when it's going to affect our lives and possibly our children. So I think the one way we could feel heard is more than 30 parking spaces extra and less units. I lost a very dear friend in October. She was killed on her bike in this city. And that shouldn't happen. We need to plan ahead. Instead of just moving forward with things as a city and fixing wastewater later and fixing things later and trying to add more portables, we need to plan it from the beginning. We need to look into the infrastructure and make sure it can support it before we build.
My name is Sandy Vixta, and I'm a retired teacher, and I substitute teach in Academy District 20. And this year and last year, I was contacted by Subservices, all licensed staff, will you please consider applying for a job? They have many open positions. Right now on the D20 website, there are 199 open positions. 53 of those positions are licensed staff, meaning teachers, counselors. So I question where the information is coming from D20. You are building at 8205 Union, the Fox Bridge apartments. That's another 232 unit complex. Then you have the apartments at the Chapel Hills Mall. Those are also high density apartments. You are sandwiching us in. You are creating a very unsafe environment for us all. Apartments.com shows there are 5,480 available units. There is no need for this.
bring up. The walk score for this neighborhood is 26. Oh, the walk score for this neighborhood is 26. And so that means everybody will have 2 cars, if not more than that, because 1 car won't be working, so they're going to have to go out and buy another car. So they're going to have 3 cars. I have some friends who are low income. I mean like low income. They don't want to live in apartments. They want to have their own houses. They want to control who comes on their property. They don't want to smell marijuana. They don't want to have fights in the middle of the night. They want to have a real house and be treated like human beings, even though they don't have any money. So the environmental design. I happen to be a neighborhood watch person for Willow Glen. And I took that course for environmental design. And what it means is that under the windows you put in prickly shrubs. So this way nobody will be standing under the windows trying to break into your house. How do an environmental design will work for a business establishment? It's a good point to have Officer Offset to come out, take a look at it, and he can give you ideas on how to safeguard your property. We have skimmed over the wildlife. We're not talking just about the Preble mouse. We're talking about a bear who is roaming the neighborhood, going into the trash cans every Monday. We're talking about deer who are jumping the fences, eating the bushes and everything. We're talking about porcupines, families of porcupines, going into my window well and tearing my screens off the windows. We're talking about bobcats. I have a cute picture of 3 bobcats, and they're baby bobcats, coming down my stairs, going around, looking at the camera and everything. So we have bobcats, we have mountain lions, and we have lynx. So this is just the animals. We have endangered, threatened species for birds. We have 9 migratory birds that are threatened. We have plants that are threatened. So how are you going to protect all of this during your development? How are you going to protect all of this from the kids that see a cougar or a bobcat and walk up to them? You're not. So we're overbuilt. I went back, HUD in 2006 did a study. And Colorado Springs at that time was at 9% vacancy rate. This past 2003 January, there was another study. We have gone from 6% vacancy rate to 7.5% vacancy rate. On Briargate Parkway, just Briargate Parkway, we have one apartment complex that has 193 people there with 18 vacancies. Another apartment complex is, they have 300 people there with 15 vacancies. The Sagebrook Apartments have 68 vacancies between now and October the 14th. We also have a potential 300 apartments being built behind T-Mobile. We have the 232 here. This is all just on one street. Come on, people, give us a break. You know, you're getting a sandwich in. And then also the property management. I had a look, and I went through each apartment complex that I could find that DBG owns. And what I found out, in a nutshell, is that property in Oregon is maintained very nicely. People are very happy with it. But then Oregon is your home state. Then we get into New Mexico, and then it explodes. Mold, mildew, pests, roaches. And these are newly built apartments. And so, and then I found out, Indiana, you don't own Indiana anymore, correct? Yeah, okay. And then also because it was in your lawsuit, you know, that there was, the property in Indiana and New Mexico had problems with handicap parking.
We've never owned in Indiana, but certainly New Mexico.
Okay, your property management was involved there.
No, but certainly New Mexico.
Okay, Mexico. And then do y'all own a senior citizen home?
We have several senior, affordable, and workforce housing.
Yeah, well, y'all got good
Yeah.
marks on that from them.
Sorry, what was that?
You got good marks from them. Okay, but the ones that have the problems are the ones you are absent from. Okay, if you're in state, you're doing a good job. If you're out of state, it's like it's forgotten. So anyway, let's see.
Do you mind if just really quickly, almost every one of our projects, we do have a big presence in New Mexico. Actually, DVG is headquartered in New Mexico. And almost every one of our projects, and that includes what Royal Pines do, what we have at Academy Heights, will have, we're reserving 2 units for people who live on site. That would be the property manager and the head
I
maintenance
know, they
folks.
got complaints. They play favoritism.
Well, my point is that it does feel locally, it will be locally managed.
Okay, but I know they play favorites.
Hi, my name is Holly. I live on Highland Place, so I'm a 2-minute drive and a 3-minute bike ride from the location being proposed. I'll go quick over some of the points of course, this being a high-density project will create strain on our already strained emergency services. Traffic, it's not about inconvenience, it's about safety, and all the points were brought up that are really relevant to one entry, one exit to where this is proposed and how many people in this high-density building. You know, my thought on the parking, if you're having to decide whether it's parking spots or
I think
open
a few
space.
folks might not be able to hear you.
Okay, pardon me. My thought on the parking, if there's the dilemma of enough parking spots or, you know, green space, it might be too big of a project for that area. And for the wildlife, it's already, you know, the wildlife is already displaced into the neighborhood, so more people is going to cause more displacement. We have to protect our wildlife. It's who we are. And then for the schools, points were made on the schools, and I have student kids in the schools, and I stand by that it is definitely overcrowded. So my question too on the $40 million bond, as I've reached out, and the requirement for this bond is only 15 years that the developer has to guarantee affordability. So my question to that is $40 million to one developer who's out of state for reduced rent for a limited number of people that will impact a thriving neighborhood forever, not just 15 years. But is that the best way to spend our money for taxpayers? 15 years is a short amount of time for $40 million to help a few people.
Thank you for your comments. It will be a 30-year restricted affordability. So, you know, the land use restriction agreement that we have will be for 30 years.
My name's Cliff Bratton. I live within about 1,000 feet of this development. I have a lot of concerns about this, and a lot of them have been addressed. But the one thing I haven't heard tonight is why this particular lot. There's lots of areas. The other day I drove on Grand Cadero, which is just on the other side of Target, close to businesses that would hire people that would live here. There's property for sale there. There's property down near, closer to Chapel Hills Mall, also close to where people would be hired that would live in this development. Why try to cram into this space, this high-density unit, putting it right up against single-family housing, causing all the traffic and safety concerns we've heard tonight? What other spaces were looked at? What other areas have been looked at for this?
We look extensively for sites. I've been hunting for sites for months and months and months. A lot has to come together for a site to work. The zoning has to be in place. The seller has to play ball. The terms have to be right. The price has to be right. The scale has to be right. So I've looked at countless sites through Colorado Springs. There is as we've mentioned, an acute shortage of this type of housing, particularly north of Woodman. We have a feasibility study done for this project. The vacancy rate in our primary market area listed is under 1% for that, and we have every confidence that this is going to be very, very highly demanded housing, just as all this other housing in Colorado Springs is that hasn't been supplied in this area.
Eric, at the end of the day, if you're not hearing it, we feel like you're going to ruin our neighborhood. That's the deal.
Everyone, we're coming to the...
No answer.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, and we have about 5 minutes left, so I don't know that we'll get through every speaker that's up here. So I'd like to pass the microphone. We probably have to...
3 minutes. I was limited to one question on the Zoom talk. Tonight's my night. Y'all can just get up and walk out. But I get to talk.
We can have a few more questions. So the reason why we have a hard out at 7:30 is because the library closes. We can't stay later than the library. Okay, they have asked us to leave at 7:30. But yeah. Okay, I have some more questions.
2 short questions. I think these are for the city. Can the HOA or can we privately create our own traffic study and put that into the record? Okay. Yeah, would the city accept a private? Okay. And then the second question I had is, when is the earliest appeal date, assuming it administrative?
The way that the appeal process works is that once a decision is rendered, there's a 10-day appeal window, and you're required to pay $176 as well as complete the appeal application. When a decision is rendered, Logan, who has all of the contact information for anybody who submitted comments to him, will send an email alerting those residents that a decision has been rendered on the application and provide the appeal instructions for anybody who's interested.
So do we have to appeal it individually, or do we appeal it as a HOA?
You can appeal it as an HOA, but you can also appeal it individually if you so choose.
Thank you. For over an hour and a half, you've heard some very good, logical, reasonable arguments for the city planners. Is there anything you've heard today that would cause you to not approve this development, yes or no?
It's not a yes or no answer.
Yes, it is.
This application is still under review, so part of the process is taking this feedback from this neighborhood, seeing if the developer could address some of those comments to the, so that the neighborhood is satisfied, and then we'll continue to process all of the comments that we've received. But it's not time for us to render a decision on this. Yes or no? It's not time for us to render a decision on this.
All of this hostility, all these problems, all these concerns would go away if you would look at putting a senior living facility in this location instead of a multi-family unit. Can you, have you considered that, and if not, why not?
The city planning office doesn't make those decisions, so I'd ask the developer to answer that question.
We have, we have thought about it. We've worked closely with various stakeholders, and we decided that family was a better fit for this location at this time. Based on the experience that we have building this housing.
My name is Randy Howard. I'm here with my wife Sandy, and we are actually the closest property to the new development. And so one of my big concerns, obviously, is having a 4-story complex looking down into our backyard. The developers talked about some mitigation by putting in plants, but I've seen the plants that go into developments that take 25 years, 30 years to get to mature heights. And we've been there for 8 years. We've done enormous improvements on our place. We're very concerned about the light and the noise. Our main living area looks at right where that development is going to be built. Our bedroom window faces that area as well. So looking at how are we going to have a place that's safe, a place that is livable with that kind of high-density place looking this in the face. The second thing, which is just as important to me, we've had major fires in our area. We had the Waldo Canyon, we had the Black Forest. Last year, I was up at the Marshall Fire. We helped provide support for some of the people. There were 1,084 houses or structures that were burned to the ground. 115-mile-an-hour winds came and people escaped with their lives, barely. 2 people died there, just like they did here in Colorado Springs. My concern is that roundabout, if you try to get 1,000 people coming, depending on which way the wind's blowing, but if you have through the animal reserve area or something, a brush fire, and the winds are coming through our development, God forbid that kind of thing should ever happen. But if it did, how do we get out of there with that many cars, and that many cars coming from that new development area, all through one single lane roundabout? And God forbid that a car should stall as people are trying to escape. We would be in serious danger. And I think just like this last week on appeal, the new houses, 240 some houses on Old Ranch, that was turned down on appeal by city council because of the very same reason, because of the lack of ability to exit that particular area. So for our own safety and for livability from a selfish perspective, because we like the area that we're in and the peace and the quiet there. And by the way, our 3 businesses that are there now are wonderful neighbors. Wonderful neighbors, right? Yeah, they are. We'll impact your neighbors, so we're happy to have them.
I don't care. I don't care, honestly. I was limited to 3 minutes by city council. I was limited to 1 question on the Zoom call. Y'all are gonna hear it. City council, this is mostly for you, not for the developer. He's done what he can. But I will tell you, I have lived, my name's Sarah, I have lived in Pine Creek, my home, for 20 years. My home backs to Pine Manor. I don't live within 1,000 feet of the property, but yeah, I'm gonna be affected by it. I didn't choose Colorado Springs. The military chose it for me, but I've made it my chosen home. I chose Pine Creek because it had something unique, besides the fact that it was beautiful, quiet, and away from multifamily, high-density housing and traffic found in a downtown area. It was and still is a wildlife interface area that has allowed a former city girl an opportunity to see and coexist with wildlife I've never seen before. And please don't think I just mean the Briargate bunnies. I mean seriously, wild animals and predators. Beer. That's what I mean. Bears, elk, deer, mountain lions, bobcats, lynx, coyotes, foxes of multiple colors. Who knew? Turkeys, hawks, owls, porcupines, raccoons, rattlesnakes. Our gardener got bit by one last week. And never least of all, the Preble's Meadow jumping mouse we've successfully managed to coexist with without wiping out by dedicating certain parcels limited mow and limited access. All of these wild animals in my backyard. I had to modify some habits. I don't walk the neighborhood after dark, not because of crime, because of predators. Pine Creek doesn't leave trash cans outside or leave pets outside alone because of the predators. Roaming cats are unlawful according to city code. We can only build so much until these wild animals will be pushed out or taken away like they took the bear last week in Wolf Ranch, deemed a nuisance for existing and living where they always have. Colorado Springs is losing a jewel of uniqueness when it loses its wild animals. It's slowly losing what made it so special to me and many others. Who has determined that we, the current residents and taxpayers in Colorado Springs, even want to be a city of 500,000? I don't. I'm sickened at seeing more and more apartment construction thrown in here, there, and everywhere, when I know there are thousands vacant today, thousands more currently being built, and thousands above that like this development that are just in the planning stages. I'm on water restrictions by CS Utilities, told what time and how often I can water. While I've been told the statistics about apartment dwellers using less water per person, I'll counter that with this statement. That still doesn't change the unchangeable: supply. Are we going to consider it acceptable to limit our daily flushes or limit our shower time and frequency in order to accommodate 500,000 people? Is greasy, dirty hair going to be in vogue because clean hair would signal overconsumption and wastefulness? It's getting ridiculous. We have had epic amounts of rain this year, and still, I can't water my yard as I choose. Heaven forbid if I wash my car and start the neighbors calling the HOA in the city. As per the Colorado Springs Business Journal article published May 16, 2023, there were around 1,600 new apartments available first quarter 2023. There are also currently 11,900, I'm going to round that to 12,000, apartments being built throughout the Springs currently. You might not think that sounds like that much, but wait. For scale, that 12,000 apartments adds 20%. Actually, 22%, to the existing inventory of 55,000 apartments built over the last 120 years in Colorado Springs. And there are 8,100 more apartment units in the planning stage, not counting all those that are waiting to be approved. All this means in the next 2 to 4 years, not including any new or recent approvals to be determined after March into the first quarter, such as this development, Colorado Springs will increase their apartment inventory by 20,000 units. And that's 40%. That's madness. Where is the influx of population to support this amount of development? Or is it greed on the side of developers, mostly from out of state, sorry Eric, and the government of this city in regards to tax revenue? Even the Colorado Springs Business Journal is stating that Colorado Springs is being overbuilt. Infrastructure must be planned and in place before these residents arrive. Police, fire, medical, daycare, schools, roads, water supply, power supply, sewer, etc. before they move in, and assume the last people who move into town will all be our police, firefighters, teachers, and healthcare workers. In that area, bus lines...
Good evening, Library 21C. The library will be closing in 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I've got 20 minutes. Bus lines